The air inside the makeshift office at Bagram Airfield always seemed to carry a fine, invisible dust, a constant reminder of the rugged Afghan landscape just beyond the perimeter. It was a place of temporary permanence, of waiting, of duty, and into that charged stillness, a sound so ordinary, yet so out of place, cut through the sterile, digital ping of an email notification. For Staff Sergeant Frank Miller, a man of 42, a man who had dedicated 13 years to his marriage and nearly 2 decades to his country, that simple ping was the sound of a fault line cracking open beneath his feet, a sound that would shatter everything he thought was solid. He was thousands of miles from his home in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, immersed in the singular focus that deployment demands. But there it was, on the screen of his government-issued laptop, an email from his wife, Susan. The subject line itself felt like a cold splash of water. Let's be adults about this. What did that even mean? With a sense of unease tightening his chest, Frank clicked it open. There was no lengthy explanation, no heartfelt apology, just a PDF attachment. As he opened it, the words divorce and filed swam before his eyes. 13 years of marriage, of shared dreams and quiet moments, reduced to a legal document delivered by the stark impersonality of cyberspace. His world, the one he was fighting to protect from afar, suddenly tilted on its axis. The betrayal was a physical blow, leaving him breathless in the thin, dusty air. This is a story about that profound personal betrayal, but it's also a testament to quiet strength, to the resilience of a man who, faced with utter devastation, chose strategy over despair, and in doing so, uncovered a truth far more sinister than he could have imagined. Before we delve into the quiet battle Frank Miller waged from halfway across the world, a battle fought not with weapons, but with wits and a steely resolve, I want to share the chilling first volley in what became the fight of his life, the moment that set him on a path he never asked for, but one he would see through to the very end. The silence of the communal shower stall at Bagram Airfield was usually a brief respite, a moment to wash away the grime and the tension of the day. But on that particular afternoon, the cascading water couldn't wash away the 3 sentences that had just detonated Frank Miller's world. 13 years, gone, emptied, moved on. He stood there, letting the water run over him. The PDF attachment seared into his memory. He read the email twice, as if the words might change, might soften, might reveal themselves to be some kind of cruel mistake. They didn't. He closed his laptop, the click of the lid sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet of his mind. He took that shower, got dressed for his upcoming shift, and said nothing to anyone. The training, the years of learning to compartmentalize, to function under duress, kicked in. When he got back to his bunk that night, the small, shared space suddenly feeling more like a cage. He replied to Susan's devastating email with a single word, understood. That was it. No arguments, no begging, no threats, just a stark acknowledgement of a new, unwelcome reality. His bunkmate, a younger soldier named Mike Wilson, a good man who knew when to speak and when to stay silent, noticed something was off. "You good, man?" Mike had asked, not even looking up from the book he was reading. "Yeah," Frank had replied, his voice flat. "Just some stuff back home." Mike nodded, and that was the end of it. Military guys. Frank knew, understood the unspoken boundaries, the need to process some battles alone. The truth was, while the method of delivery was a shock, the news itself wasn't entirely a surprise. Those little changes in Susan, the ones he'd noticed months ago, now cast long, dark shadows. 2 weeks later, a different kind of digital notification buzzed on his phone, another jab to an already raw wound. It was from their joint account at Midwest Community Bank. Another withdrawal, $88,500, almost everything that was left. He set his fork down in the mess hall, the clatter echoing the sudden emptiness in his stomach. He opened the app. The joint account balance was down to $22.37, their savings. $47,000 they'd painstakingly built up over years was gone, completely transferred to an account he didn't recognize. He found himself thinking, what else was I blind to? That night, unable to sleep, he called the bank from the base phone center, the connection crackling with static. The weary voice on the other end confirmed his fears. Susan had been moving money for weeks, small amounts at first, then larger ones. The big transfers had started the day after he deployed. He hung up, standing in the dusty hallway, watching other soldiers laughing, calling their kids, their wives, their parents, normal life happening all around him while his was burning down. That's when he remembered the home security system he'd installed at their Cedar Rapids house the previous year after a minor break-in down the street. Susan probably forgot he could access it remotely. He pulled out his laptop, logged in. The cameras were live. A strange pickup truck, one he'd never seen before, was parked in their driveway. Then, a man he didn't recognize walked into view, whistling as he played with their golden retriever, Max. The man was wearing Frank's favorite Seahawk sweatshirt, the one Susan had given him for his birthday. He was drinking from Frank's coffee mug, the one with the 82nd Airborne insignia. And then, Susan walked into the kitchen, laughing, leaning against this man, Gary Jenkins, as he now knew him to be. The kitchen he'd renovated himself during his last leave, pouring sweat and love into every cabinet, every tile. That sight, something shifted inside him. It wasn't the hot flash of anger he might have expected. It was something colder, clearer, a chilling resolve. He closed the laptop and pulled out his phone. His fingers moved with a new, grim purpose, making a list: call Jim Riley, his old Army buddy, now a lawyer in Des Moines. Check the VA loan terms on the house. Contact his master sergeant about the possibility of emergency leave. Review the home refinance documents Susan had casually mentioned last year. Check the security on his military pension accounts. He didn't feel sad anymore. He didn't even feel truly angry. He felt focused, like he was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion now. This was about strategy. Could a digital footprint, a forgotten password, become the very tool to unravel such a calculated betrayal? Frank was about to find out. 2 months later, Frank Miller stepped back onto American soil, but he wasn't the same man who'd left Cedar Rapids. The Iowa air, once familiar and comforting, now felt charged with an undercurrent of deceit. He was an investigator in his own life, his mission clear to uncover the truth and reclaim what was his. He didn't call Susan, didn't text. Instead, he checked into the Pioneer Inn, a modest motel in downtown Cedar Rapids, under a different name, Mark Peterson. His first call was to Jim Riley, his old Army pal, now a sharp-witted lawyer. They met at the Crossroads Diner, a classic American eatery just off Highway 30, the aroma of coffee and grilled onions hanging in the air. "You look like hell, Frank," Jim said, sliding into the booth, his expression a mixture of concern and grim determination. "Feel like it too," Frank replied. Jim didn't waste time. He handed Frank a folder. "Everything we discussed," he said. "The house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and this." He pulled out a separate paper. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances. It's a refinance application for your house for $330,000. With your signature on it." Frank's blood ran cold. "Except," Jim continued, his voice low, "it wasn't quite your signature. Someone tried to copy it, but they missed details. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern wasn't yours. Susan. She'd forged his signature, taken out a loan against their house, then cleared out their accounts." "Busy woman," Frank said, the words laced with a bitter irony. "It gets better," Jim added. "She listed her boyfriend, a Gary Jenkins, as a co-applicant. Turns out Mr. Jenkins has a record 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. The next day, Frank drove past their house. Gary Jenkins' truck was gone, but Susan's car was in the driveway. He parked down the street, watching, a plan forming. Confrontation wasn't the way. Instead, he drove to Midwest Community Bank, met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance. Frank presented his military ID, his driver's license with his real signature, and the forged documents Jim had procured. The officer's face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately," he stammered. "I understand," Frank said calmly. "I've already filed a police report." That night, a text from Susan. "Who have you been talking to at the bank? Jeremy said someone was asking questions." Frank didn't respond. The following day, he was at the county clerk's office, filing paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud, registering a formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without his presence. The bank officially froze the refinance money. Then Jim called. "There's more. Your wife's boyfriend, Gary Jenkins, he got pulled over this morning driving your truck, the one still in your name. Suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle." Frank felt a grim satisfaction. "And," Jim continued, "they found some interesting things in the truck. Prescription pads from Maple Street Dental Care. Where Susan works, they weren't blank." Frank closed his eyes. Stealing prescription pads? This was spiraling. The bank fraud investigator, a Mr. Thompson, contacted Frank. He confirmed that about half the refinanced money, around $14,600, had already been transferred out before the freeze to a Daniel Spencer, a real estate agent. Jim Riley did some more digging. Turns out, Spencer specialized in quick cash deals and had a history with Gary Jenkins. They'd closed 3 deals together in the past 2 years, always selling homes well below market value. The horrifying realization dawned on Frank. This wasn't just Susan leaving him for some lowlife. This was a planned operation, a scheme, and Becky was either a willing participant or a deeply naive pawn. And the methods, it made him wonder if other military families, deployed and vulnerable, had been targeted. Jim, sensing the wider implications, had already contacted the FBI's Financial Crime Division. This crosses state lines, involves military personnel, VA loans. They're interested. Frank, Jim had said. Frank sat in his motel room that night, a single beer in his hand, the pieces clicking into place. It was bigger than he thought. The FBI agents, Patel and Donovan, met with him the next morning. They confirmed they'd been investigating Jenkins and Spencer for months. "You're not the first, Mr. Miller," Agent Patel said, "but your case, with the clear evidence of forgery and the timely reporting, might be the one that breaks it open." A few days later, Susan texted again, more desperate this time. "Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud, and Jeremy got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening." Frank stared at the message, then typed slowly, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" 3 dots appeared as she started typing, then stopped. Started again, stopped, finally. "I don't know what you're talking about," Frank replied. $14,600, multiple transfers, house listing, no response for 10 minutes. Then, "It's not what you think." Frank turned off his phone. The next morning, Jim called. "The FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months." Later that week, Susan texted again. "We need to talk in person. Meet me at Liberty Park tomorrow." Frank showed the text to Jim. "Don't go," Jim advised. "Nothing good can come from talking to her right now." "I won't," Frank said, "but I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her." They drove to Frank's house at 9:30 a.m., parked across the street. At 9:45, Susan came out, got in her car, and drove off in the direction of Liberty Park. "Now we wait," Frank said. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up to Frank's house, a real estate agent logo on the door. Daniel Spencer, Gary Jenkins, now presumably out on bail, came out to greet him. They talked in the driveway, then went inside. "Should we follow them?" Jim asked. Frank shook his head, a small, grim smile playing on his lips. "No need. I installed security cameras last year, interior and exterior. They upload to cloud storage." He pulled out his phone, opened the security app, and angled the screen so Jim could see. Spencer and Jenkins were in the living room. Spencer was taking photos. Jenkins was pointing at features. Frank turned up the volume. Spencer was saying, "I've got a buyer interested already. Cash offer as usual." "How much?" Jenkins asked. "We list at $470, they offer $420. Everybody's happy." "What about the husband?" Jenkins pressed. "Becky says he's causing trouble." Spencer waved dismissively. "Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. He'll take a settlement to make it go away." Frank looked at Jim. "You getting this?" Jim was already recording the feed on his phone. Frank forwarded the security feed access to Agent Patel with a short message, "Happening now." 30 minutes later, The quiet suburban street was swarming with FBI vehicles. Frank and Jim watched from down the street as agents led Spencer and Jenkins out of the house in handcuffs. As Frank watched them being cuffed, a cold thought settled in his mind. They thought I was just another soldier, easily dismissed. They had no idea who they were dealing with. His phone rang. It was Agent Patel. "Got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme," she said, "plus conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We're going to need a formal statement from you, Mr. Miller." "Of course," Frank said. Then Patel added, "And Mr. Miller, your wife just arrived at the scene. She's distressed." Frank looked down the street. Susan was standing on their lawn, hands over her mouth, watching as FBI agents carried boxes of documents from their house. The house he had bought, the life he had tried to build. The clink of handcuffs on Gary Jenkins and Daniel Spencer was a stark, metallic sound in the otherwise quiet Cedar Rapids neighborhood. But for Frank Miller, watching from a distance, it was the first clear note in a symphony of justice he hadn't initially set out to compose. His focus had been on reclaiming what was his, on untangling the mess Susan had made. But as he stood there, seeing Susan arrive, her face a mask of shock and dawning horror, as FBI agents carried boxes from their home, a different kind of weight settled in. "What happens to her?" he asked Agent Patel over the phone, his voice devoid of triumph, only a weary acknowledgement of the wreckage. "That depends, Mr. Miller," Patel replied evenly, "on what she knew and on what you want." Frank watched Susan for a long moment. 13 years of marriage, good years at the beginning, before whatever this ugliness was had taken root and choked the life out of it. "I just want what's right," he said finally, the words feeling heavy but true. The federal case moved with surprising speed. Faced with the mountain of evidence Frank and Jim had meticulously gathered, compounded by the FBI's own investigation and the damning audio from the house, Gary Jenkins and Daniel Spencer both took plea deals. They implicated each other and several other conspirators in what turned out to be a sophisticated three-state operation targeting military families, preying on their unique vulnerabilities during deployments. Susan, for her part, maintained she knew nothing about the larger scheme. She claimed Jeremy had convinced her Frank was hiding money, planning to leave her with nothing, and that the refinance was his idea, a way to secure her future. Maybe that was true, Frank thought, or maybe it wasn't. In the end, it almost didn't matter to him anymore. She agreed to a settlement, full restitution of all stolen funds, complete forfeiture of any claim to the house or his military pension, and a signed, notarized confession detailing the forgery of his signature on the loan documents. In exchange, Frank agreed not to press separate criminal charges against her. The federal case against Jenkins and Spencer was punishment enough for her involvement, he reasoned. Dragging her through another court felt like giving her more of his time, his energy, his life. He just wanted it over, a clean break, as clean as something this messy could ever be. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that first shocking email from Bagram. No fault. The papers said, a quiet, anticlimactic end. On the day the last piece of paperwork was signed, sealing the end of his marriage, Frank got a call from Agent Patel. "Jeremy Ryan was sentenced today," she said, her voice professional but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Daniel Spencer got 12. "Thought you'd want to know." "Thank you, Agent Patel. I appreciate that," Frank replied. "There's something else," she added. "We found evidence they've done this to at least 11 other military families. Your case, Mr. Miller, your diligence in gathering evidence, it helped us build the pattern. Those families might get their money back, or at least some justice, because of you." Frank hung up the phone, a complex mix of emotions washing over him. He hadn't set out to be a hero, just a man trying to right a profound wrong. He sold the house in Cedar Rapids soon after. He couldn't stand to live in it anymore. Too many memories, too much betrayal soaked into those walls he'd once painted with hope. With the money from the sale and his share of the recovered funds, he bought a small, rustic cabin outside of Helena, Montana, 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land with a clear creek running behind it, and no neighbors for miles. He took early retirement from the army. 20 years, he figured, was enough. He'd given enough. He got a German shepherd, a loyal companion he named Scout. He started doing carpentry work for the locals, nothing fancy, just honest work that kept his hands busy and his mind clear. It paid the bills, and his military pension covered the rest. Sometimes, in the quiet Montana evenings, sitting on his porch with Scout at his feet, he'd think about Susan. Jim had heard she'd moved back to her hometown in Oregon, was working at another dental office, starting over, he guessed. He didn't hate her anymore. He didn't much feel anything about her. To be honest, she'd made her choices, and so had he. His path was here, amidst the mountains and the pines, a world away from the deceit that had nearly broken him. One evening, a letter arrived, postmarked Fort Worth, Texas. It was from a woman named Helen. Her husband was in the Navy, deployed, when Gary Jenkins and Daniel Spencer had tried to run their scheme on her. The FBI, she explained, had given her Frank's name as part of the larger case file. "You don't know me," she wrote, her handwriting neat and steady. "But you saved our home. Thank you. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away." Frank read the letter twice, a lump forming in his throat. He pinned it to his refrigerator, next to a picture of Scout. Some days, when the silence of his new life got too loud, or the memories too sharp, he'd look at that letter and remember that something good, something truly meaningful, had come from all of it. Last he heard, Jeremy and Spencer were still in prison. The system, for once, had worked. As for him, Frank Miller was finding his way forward, one quiet day at a time, building something new, something that couldn't be stolen or forged or betrayed, something that was just his, for the rest of his days. They took a lot, but they couldn't take his spirit. They couldn't forge his future. That he built himself. Frank's journey is a testament to quiet strength and the enduring power of integrity. It reminds us that even in the face of devastating betrayal, the human spirit can not only endure, but rebuild, finding a new dawn. What are the moments, big or small, that have shown you your own resilience? We'd be honored if you shared your thoughts in the comments below. And if Frank's story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more tales of courage and the quiet victories of the human heart. Perhaps it's these stories that help us all remember the strength we carry within us.